Oh, 40. You know, I knew this was going to happen eventually, but I just didn't feel quite ready for you to get here so soon. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I didn't feel 40 years old, but the reality was I was really 40 years old. I mean, I think, with most birthdays and most milestone birthdays, we spend an inordinate amount of time questioning, these deep philosophical things in our lives, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? And is 40 the age now when I am actually technically a grown-up? Don't tell anybody that, but that is true. That is actually what I thought. The same kinds of questions we asked ourselves when we were like 20 and maybe 30. And so, during this time in my life, I knew the answer to this question. This question that I had was, why am I not where I thought I should be at 40, and what the hell happened? All I had to do was really look myself in the mirror to answer that question. And the reality is that most of my life I had this little inner rebel inside of me. And this little inner rebel wanted to be different from people, and it wanted to shock people. And sometimes it did a great job at that, and other times it didn't. So when I was a teenager, I decided that I wanted to be about 25, and so I did what I thought most 25-year-olds would do. I shaved both sides of my head, I wore all black, I dressed as a gothic person, and I hung out in the DC hardcore punk rock scene. When my friends went away to college, I actually got pregnant and I stayed home with my baby. And then when my friends started their careers and their jobs, I went back to school. And then when my friends went off in the world and settled down and had kids, I got started in a really exciting career. And so really no matter where I had been in my life, I never really felt like I was with everybody else. I just never really felt like I had my place and my people. And so during this time of turning 40, the season of self-reflection, or perhaps it was a bit of self-absorption, I was alone at home on a summer afternoon one Saturday, and for reasons I really don't understand, I went to Google and I typed in 3 words: Burning Man Festival. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this. I really wasn't very familiar with this. I hadn't been privy to any recent conversations about Burning Man. I had no group of friends who were talking about it, nobody I knew who was really dying to go. But for whatever the inspiration was, I ended up on this website, okay? And the website, like across the very top of the page in big bold letters, it said, "The man burns in 35 days." I didn't really know who the man was or what the man was, but I was intrigued. And so there were a lot of stories, and there was a blog, and there were videos and pictures, and so, I'm browsing around the website, and I learned that the man is apparently this effigy, and the effigy can represent really anything you want it to be. And one of the last nights of the festival, they burned this man to the ground. The festival is also outside of Reno, Nevada, and it seemed to involve things like hardcore camping and crazy elaborate costumes and all-night desert dance parties and art and fire, and also some really important principles. The principles included things like radical reliance, radical self-expression, radical participation, and lots of smiling, happy people. I loved it. I loved this thing instantly. Mention radical to me, and I'm there. So the seed was planted. A couple nights later, about 2 o'clock in the morning, in a moment of impulse, that's the moment when your best thinking is like really at play. I went downstairs in my house and I got online and I purchased 1 ticket to the Burning Man Festival. Now, let me just remind you, I knew nothing about this. With the exception of that website visit, I hadn't been to Nevada before. I didn't really understand the geography of that part of the United States. I thought, well, I think it's close to California, maybe. And as far as camping was concerned, let's face it, I had a little experience, but it was mostly with the Girl Scouts, both my daughter's troop and my own when I was little. And so I decided, that, surprisingly enough, there was this rational voice in my head that was saying, Kathy, you're supposed to be there and that everything is going to be okay. After a couple days of kind of like a brewing anxiety, I thought, I should probably talk to someone who has had some experience. And so I remembered that previously in my life, I had this boss named Shabir. And Shabir was someone I admired a great deal because Shabir was really always himself. He was very authentic, and he always told you what he felt and what he meant. And he was a strong personality, but also very kind. And he lived in San Francisco at this time. And so I sat down and I typed Shabir an email, and it said something like, "Hey Shabir, hope all is well, I haven't talked to you in a while. look, I think I accidentally purchased a ticket to Burning Man, and I'm planning on going by myself. Am I insane? He must have agreed because the guy responded to me within minutes, and we hadn't spoken in a couple years. And within a week, Shabir and I are in a diner having breakfast. Apparently, there's a whole lot you need to know about Burning Man before you go. And what Shabir called, what I thought about living out in the desert for a week, Shabir called it surviving out in the desert for a week. And evidently, people are planning this trip a year beforehand. They're getting all their gear and they're planning in advance. And so, we sit down and basically have this crash course on Burning Man 101. Apparently, there's no running water, there's no electricity, there's no cell phone service, and there's no internet. So I am instantly terrified, but pretending to be very calm about the whole thing. And Shabir goes on to tell me, Kathy, you're going to need a tent, a really good, sturdy tent to protect you from the elements. And he kept using this word elements, which I nodded and I pretended to understand what the elements were. And as he went on, the elements he described were things like 110-degree temperatures by day and about 40-degree temperatures by night. He also said, you're going to need really good goggles, really industrial strength goggles and a dust mask, and you're going to need head coverings because of all the sand and dust storms. And it's whiteout conditions, he said. And so when that happens, just sit down on the ground and remain calm and still, but be really careful not to get hit by an art car or a mutant vehicle. I had absolutely no clue what he was talking about. And then he got into costumes and elaborate crazy gear that you want to wear. And so we went on about this conversation, and I have to say that I left the diner with one thought. I could possibly die on this journey. But again, that rational voice inside of me reminded me that I think, I was going to be okay, and I had enough information, and then I would figure out a way to get by. And so 2 weeks later, I board a flight to Reno, Nevada, and I am coming straight from a corporate meeting in DC. I am wearing a very conservative corporate black suit, and it was the kind where, you have to it's got to come below the knee, and I've got heels on, and I'm dragging these 2 big REI duffel bags by myself, just filled with stuff and all that gear that's going to protect me from the elements. And I make my way out on this journey out west into the desert, and it goes pretty smooth. It's not without bumps. I ran into some trouble on the way, but eventually I got my way out to this thing in the desert. And as I arrived to the festival gate, this group of crazy-looking, dusty, costume-covered people came running to my car, screaming, "Is this your first time? Is this your first time?" And within minutes, they have me out of the car, and they have embraced me in a hug that is so deep, a complete stranger, to the core of who I am, and they said, "Welcome home." I've just returned from my 3rd burn, and I can assure you that I have definitely found my place. My place is with these misfits who go out into the desert in Black Rock City and spend a week celebrating life and love. And it's with people who are in costumes and characters, and you can be anybody and anything you want to be out there. And as you would expect, there are all the artist types and the musicians and the performers, but it also attracts quite a bit of the regular types, the doctors and the lawyers and the corporate people. And I think we all have a little bit of adventure in us. And I'm really relieved and happy to know that I haven't lost the radical in me, even if sometimes I have to wear that ugly corporate suit. It took me 40 years to get here, but I have to tell you that I'm pretty excited about the next 40.